What's good, everyone? Welcome back to another video. Today we're jumping back into the Go Battle League arena, throwing it back just a little bit. Pause? Not like that. We're getting a little bit old school with our line of Toxicroak, Umbreon, and Skarmory. All three of these Pokemon used to be healthy parts of previous metas, but have since been replaced or supplanted by better options. So Toxicroak, we have other fighters or pseudo fighters like Deoxys and Medicham. Skarmory has been replaced by everyone's favorite flyer of Noctowl. But we're going to see if these Pokemon and this team is still viable in today's meta. So our game plan during our battles is to generate energy with Toxicroak, hopefully hunt some of those steel types as well as normal types on the lead, and if we don't have a great matchup, we'll build up some energy and then dip out into our absolute tank of a safe swap Umbreon. Umbreon's job is to not necessarily win switch for us, but to be able to chip Pokemon, get them low, hopefully get them to dump their energy so that Toxicroak can come back in and continue building energy. Overall, what we want to do is have Toxicroak in shields down scenarios at the end of the game so that Toxicroak can fire off its extremely hard-hitting moves into some defenseless Pokemon. But without further ado, let's hop into some battles and see if we can make this throwback line work for us. As we hop into our first battle, I want to start these battles off with a song. I want to say I'm sorry for the things I've done with this layout. It's so scuffed. I apologize for this scuffed layout. I realized it right when the battle started, but I was locked in, and so I was not able to switch it in time. But this battle's pretty intense, so I did want to leave it in here. On the lead, we have our Toxicroak against this Medicham, and we attempted to catch a Psychic, but unfortunately we jumped the gun just a touch, and I swapped into my Umbreon on 7 counters instead of 8. And so now we have our Umbreon against this Medicham, and like we discussed at the onset of the video, Umbreon's job here isn't necessarily to flip switch, it's just to get the Medicham low so that Toxicroak can come back in here, do some Stardew Valley, and farm this boy down. Here comes Toxicroak farming up, has not thrown any energy yet, so he has about 10 counters worth of energy. We're going to be throwing that energy on a Sludge Bomb into the opponent's Trevenant. We're staying in, building up energy like we discussed. We want to have energy on our Toxicroak, and we're met by the opponent's Galarian Stunfisk. This is a tough matchup, but honestly, I haven't ran Sims on it in a long time, and I remember it being a lot more difficult. That was probably before Rock Slide got nerfed a few seasons back, but here we see Rock Slide doesn't do that much damage to our Skarmory, maybe about 20 to 25%. We can definitely take 3, maybe 4 of these, as Stunfisk is now throwing its second Rock Slide into us. So yeah, it will need to throw about 4, hopefully not be able to get the Mud Shot down after the third. We are throwing our 2 Sky Attacks and then a Brave Bird into the opponent's Galarian Stunfisk, and now I'm thinking we might be able to preserve our Skarmory. That's going to be our win condition as the opponent swaps into their Trevenant. Even though this video is featuring Toxicroak, I'm content with letting it go, but we do survive on the blessings of our ancestors. Toxicroak getting to the Sludge Bomb, now getting the Trevenant extremely low. Skarmory able to farm that Trevenant down, and now we are going for the aggressive farm down onto the Steel Ground type, and we are able to effectively do so, as all we have to do is shield up this Rock Slide. The Air Slash will be going through, and Skarmory calls game. Well played by the opponent. Thank you for the match. So like I said, I did want to cut that battle out just because it was so scuffed layout wise, but it was pretty intense, so I decided to leave it in there regardless. On the lead here, we have Galarian Stunfisk against our Toxicroak. This is a pretty good lead for us, as Toxicroak will be resisting the Rock Slides from the opponent's Stunfisk, and they are receiving significant damage from our counters. You see the pressure that our Toxicroak is applying as the opponent throws the resisted Rock Slide, and we no shield that as they swap into their Pelipper and we counter swap into our Skarmory. I also haven't necessarily ran Sims on this battle. I thought that the Weather Balls might do less. I was kind of surprised at how hard hitting this opponent's Pelipper was. It's extremely spammy and we know that, but it also hits pretty hard. So we're going for our first sky attack here, which will be threatening the shield of the opponent. They choose to no shield, and I'm hoping that our Skarmory will be able to survive here, as I doubt myself, and we do expend our first shield there. To realign our Pokemon, opponent bringing in their Galarian Stunfisk. Now we are firing off this Brave Bird, as the opponent will be attempting to build up, I'm assuming, past a Rock Slide. This is going to get them extremely low, and because of that, they are forced to throw their energy here. This Rock Slide will be taking us out, of course, as we are debuffed and it's doing neutral damage, but this allows us, because the opponent did not farm up any extra energy, to counter down the opponent, and we are met by the opponent's Meganium in the back. Meganium will not be appreciating these Sludge Bombs, as they do expend their final shield. Now with all shields down, Toxicroak will be doing super effective damage, massive damage, bam, onto the opponent's Meganium. And at this point, Umbreon's been riding the bench all game. Umbreon, get in there, close out this game for us with a couple snarls. Umbreon calls game. Well played by the opponent. Thank you for the match. So that was one of those plays where Toxicroak does all the heavy lifting, and then he lobs it up to Umbreon at the end, and Umbreon goes for the slam dunk. But hopping straight into our next battle, we have a familiar lead of Toxicroak versus Medicham. So in that first battle, I did jump the gun, like I said. We swapped on 7 instead of 8 counters. This time we swap appropriately, catching the Psychic onto our Umbreon, as the opponent expends all of their Medicham energy to do extremely minimal damage. Umbreon is met by this Registeel, which will be doing super effective damage with their Focus Blast, but we are able to throw on a CMP tie with this foul play. I'm a little bit concerned at this point, as Lock-On does almost no damage. It does 1 damage per Lock-On, but at this point, I'm not sure if our foul play is going to be threatening the health or shields of Registeel enough to prevent the lock-on down. But luckily for us, we CMP tie. I'm not too concerned about the foul play. I'm more happy that the Registeel expended its energy. As the Registeel has very little energy, we are able to farm up and now throw this Sludge Bomb into the opponent's Medicham, who came back in to greet us. Hello, Medicham. Goodbye, Medicham. You should be swapping out here, but the opponent chooses to instead stay in with Medicham, fire off this Ice Punch. It will not be threatening the health or shields of our Skarmory, and we are met by the Registeel in the back. I don't want to have to expend a shield here, and I know Registeel is nearing a charge move. We do throw this Sky Attack, and it does go shielded by the opponent. Registeel commonly runs Zap Cannon, which will be knocking us out with our Skarmory, so we will expend our shield, our first shield, and unfortunately the opponent does get the attack debuff, and because of that, they are able to reach a second charge move onto our Skarmory. We're forced to expend our final shield, which does not get another attack debuff, but fortunately for us, opponent reveals their final Pokemon in the back, which is this Trevenant. At this point, I could have built up to a Brave Bird, but I am thinking that this Sky Attack will be able to knock out the opponent or get it very low, allowing us to swap back in to our Toxicroak and throw this final Mud Bomb, knocking out the opponent's Trevenant. That's Toxicroak calling game. Well played by the opponent. Thank you for the match. Up to this point in the battles, I noticed that we are seeing some decent team synergy here, with Umbreon drawing out Skarmory's hardest counters, especially Registeel and Galarian Stunfisk. But hopping into the next battle, we have this Azumarill on the lead against our Toxicroak. This is a fairly neutral lead, as we will be able to hit hard with our Sludge Bomb, but Toxicroak, being the glass cannon that it is, will not be appreciating the Ice Beams or the Play Roughs, especially the Hydro Pump from the opponent's Azumarill. For that reason, we swap out onto our Umbreon, able to catch the Ice Beam, and now Azumarill will be firing off Play Roughs into our Umbreon. Umbreon will be able to survive that Play Rough rather easily, but will not be able to survive another Play Rough, and as such, we are going to be firing off these last resorts. Here, I'm attempting to throw on CMP tie, but the opponent, knowing that they are not being threatened their health or shields by anything that Umbreon has in store for them, just continues farming, and we do get to the last resort on CMP tie. That was excellent counting by the opponent, as they will be knocking out our Azumarill with another Play Rough. We are waiting out the switch timer, but our switch clock is already up, so we don't have to worry about it too much as we swap into our Toxicroak. Toxicroak will shield this play rough. It will be dealing neutral damage. And at this point, I am building up. And the Azumarill just reached another charge move. And we are firing off this Mud Bomb, which will be knocking out the opponent's Azumarill. Opponent brings in their Altaria, and this is a good example of, even though Toxicroak, this isn't a great matchup for it, it is able to do some pretty significant damage with its hard-hitting charge moves. Opponent counter swaps into their Lickitung. We will be resisting all of Lickitun's charge moves as it typically runs Body Slam and Power Whip. However, these licks are starting to add up for sure, as we are almost at 50% health before firing off this first, or we are at 50% health before firing off this first Sky attack. Lickitung putting in work now, almost getting our Skarmory into the red before we are able to fire off a second Sky attack. At this point, just for transparency purposes, I have to admit I have lost track of my HP as well as my energy, and I'm just staring my switch clock in the eye, hoping that I can swap out before the Lickitung has another charge move to get the aggressive farm down onto the Lickitung with my Toxicroak, but we are unable to outpace the Lickitung. I no shield, assuming that I have more health on my Skarmory. That was a very unpleasant surprise, as Skarmory is left with 1 HP and our shield goes in the dumpster. Well played to the opponent. Thank you for the match. Hopping straight into our next battle, we have Umbreon on the lead against Toxicroak. This is a misplay by me, and I realize that I have a pretty bad tendency of doing this, as after I build up a significant amount of energy and the opponent swaps in, I always will throw energy into the opponent's Pokemon. This should be Stardew Valley for the Skarmory, as we should just be able to farm that Venusaur all the way down from full health, as Skarmory does not care about Vine Whips, doesn't care about Frenzy Plant, doesn't care about Sludge Bomb, and we mistakenly throw our Sludge Bomb into that Venusaur. It did do a significant amount of damage, but that energy is better placed somewhere else. So instead, we have minimal energy on our Skarmory as the opponent swaps in or brings in their Azumarill farming up, and counter swaps into their Umbreon. Umbreon will be firing off its energy. If this is a foul play, into our Skarmory, and then we counter swap into our Toxicroak. At this point, I'm thinking the opponent has an Azumarill, that's an anti-fighter. They have a Venusaur, a poison type, that's an anti-fighter. No way they're running Psychic here, but that's a bam KO onto our Toxicroak, as they are indeed running Psychic. So the benefit of that is now we know that the opponent's Umbreon cannot touch our Umbreon with any of its charge moves, but the price of that information cost us our Toxicroak and all of his energy. Was it a fair deal? I say no deal, but that's okay. Hopping back into this battle, we have our Umbreon firing off its energy, the last resort, into the opponent's Umbreon, as the opponent will be bringing back in their Azumarill. Azumarill here building up energy, nearing its next charge move as we just get to our last resort. Will this be the play rough? We no shield, and it is the play rough, but Umbreon is able to survive as we now bring back in our Skarmory to fire off this Sky attack. And quick intermission here, have to say I have seen a lot of Azumarill early season, and that's kind of surprising to me. I thought that Azumarill might be out of the meta with, but tried and true Azumarill, you can't get rid of it no matter how hard you try, as the opponent chooses to not delay the inevitable and calls game. Well played by the opponent. Thank you for the match. We have our 3-2 set, hopping into our second set here. Overall, a well-played first set with, of course, some misplays sprinkled in there as per usual. We have a fantastic lead with the Alolan Sandslash on the lead, and we are met by the opponent's Noctowl as we counter swap into our Umbreon. I admittedly wasn't too sure how to play this Noctowl swap in or safe swap, and thinking about it after the match, I almost definitely should have swapped into our Skarmory. Even though Umbreon does have a fantastic matchup against Noctowl, Skarmory's matchup is even just a little bit better, but more so than that, Skarmory doesn't have as much play against the opponent's Alolan Sandslash, whereas Umbreon will have fantastic play, as bulky as it is, and being able to resist the fast move of Shadow Claw. So I definitely feel like I should have went into the Skarmory here. But as such, we have Umbreon here firing off this foul play, which will be threatening the health and shield of this Noctowl. Noctowl choosing to shield, and they do go down one shield, but they are able to secure switch advantage for themselves as we bring back in our Toxicroak. I felt like this was a decent opportunity to match their one shield and get a significant amount of energy in return. Toxicroak is able to successfully counter down the flyer and is met by the opponent's Toxicroak. So the mirror match here, opponent core broken by our Toxicroak. We go for the catch of the Mud Bomb onto our Skarmory, hoping to generate a little bit of energy before the opponent is able to swap out into their Alolan Sandslash, and the opponent spending too much time with their Toxicroak, who is now dangerously low before the opponent is able to swap into their Alolan Sandslash. At this point, I am content with letting my Skarmory go, even though I do have a significant amount of energy, but I am able to survive on the blessings of my ancestors. 1 HP, fire off that Brave Bird onto the Sandslash, get it low enough to be able to counter it down, expend my final shield here. And although we do lose CMP, we do have that final shield remaining and are able to throw this Mud Bomb, which will easily knock out the imposter Toxicroak, as our Toxicroak calls game. Well played by the opponent. Thank you for the match. Hopping into our next battle, we have Toxicroak on the lead against Pelipper. This is a terrible lead for us, as Pelipper will be doing super effective damage to our Toxicroak with its weak attack. As such, we swap into our Umbreon, but the opponent counter swaps into an absolute brick wall of a counter swap, which is Scrafty. Scrafty will be double resisting our fast move of Snarl, as well as our more reliable charge move of Foul Play. For that reason, we're stuck with firing off these last resorts. And at this point, after Scrafty having thrown one Power Punch, they will be able to farm us all the way down. Now, at a ton of energy with still a decent amount of health left, Toxicroak comes back in, but is not able to farm the Scrafty all the way down. Going for the farm down, our counter does not go through as the Scrafty reaches another charge move, and we are forced to expend a shield. Even though that Foul Play would be resisted, any damage is significant damage onto our Toxicroak as the opponent reveals their final Pokemon, which is the Frostlass. This is a tough matchup for Skarmory, as these avalanches and powder snows will be hitting for neutral damage, and Frostlass hits like a train. We do reach this Sky Attack, firing off the first Sky Attack into the opponent, but they have 2 shields remaining, so they can easily expend both shields if necessary, be able to take our final shield, and still be able to win this matchup, as Skarmory does reach another Sky Attack, but Frostlass will be no shielding this. Okay, so the opponent identifies that their win condition is Pelipper, or just wants to bring Pelipper off the bench, as it's been there for a while. We try to catch a charge move onto our Toxicroak, but Toxicroak is blown away with that Hurricane, and we are now shieldless with 1 HP and will be getting knocked out by the opponent's Weather Ball. Pelipper calls game. Well played by the opponent. Thank you for the match. Hopping straight into our next battle, we have a fantastic lead. Toxicroak on the lead against Scrafty. Toxicroak will be doing super effective damage with his counters while resisting the opponent's counters, and for that reason, the opponent safe swaps into Pelipper. We counter swap into our Umbreon, and we have Pelipper firing off a Hurricane into our Umbreon, as we are now at the back-to-back Foul Plays. That Hurricane, I wasn't sure how much damage it would do, but it did around 50%. So we will definitely not be able to live another one. Opponent reaches another charge move here, and it's just the Weather Ball. We call that, and we no shield it. Umbreon is a tank, so we don't have to worry too much about non-Hurricane charge moves from this Pelipper, as we do grab the opponent's first shield and are going to threaten their second shield, if not knock out this Pelipper with another Foul Play. Pelipper does expend its final shield, going for the farm down, but instead perfectly catching our Foul Play onto their Scrafty. Scrafty coming back in, we counter swap back into our Toxicroak, and at this point, Toxicroak can just farm all the way down, as we did see in a previous battle how much damage this Foul Play will do, about 30%, but we can just counter all the way down. We have 2 Mud Bombs, we're at the back-to-back, and we can greet whatever comes back in with this charge move. I mistakenly throw this Mud Bomb thinking it might KO. I get so greedy, now forced to shield up the opponent's Weather Ball because of that greed, and also having to shield a second time to preserve this energy. At this point, I'm thinking whatever's in the back will not appreciate something that Toxicroak has for it. And luckily, I was right, because it is a Shadow Electivire. That is some serious spice by the opponent. Please do not try that at home without adult supervision. But regardless, we have Toxicroak calling game. Well played by the opponent. Thank you for the match. Hopping into our next battle, we have a core breaker for this team, Unovan Stunfisk. So Unovan Stunfisk will be dealing super effective damage with its mud bombs onto our Toxicroak, and will be dealing super effective damage onto our Skarmory with its discharge. For that reason, we catch the first mud bomb onto our Umbreon, but we are greeted by a tough counter swap with the opponent's Vigoroth. Vigoroth, another pseudo fighter like we talked about in the beginning, that kind of has taken the place of Toxicroak. They are dealing super effective damage onto our Umbreon here with their counters. Vigoroth able to reach a charge move here. Umbreon will be able to survive this body slam, but we will be getting countered down by the opponent. As we throw this foul play on CMP Tai, able to get some significant chip damage onto the opponent, allowing them to farm us down so that Toxicroak can get the farm down onto the Vigoroth, and we are able to successfully do so as the opponent swaps into their Skarmory, and this is looking very tough for us as our switch clock is just getting started right now. We are hard countered on our current matchup. We're hard countered in the back with our Toxicroak being aligned to Skarmory. So it turns out that winning switch there was everything. Knowing that maybe having better read the line, could have expended a shield on Umbreon in an attempt to win switch. But like this, it's going to be a tough game for us. We're down a shield here. I'm going for the Brave Bird as I identified that maybe a win condition is knocking out this Unovan Stunfisk, but also just not wanting them to be able to two-shield, two Pokemon flex us. So I throw this Sky Attack, able to grab a shield from the opponent, and now throwing off this Mud Bomb into the opponent, hopefully knocking out their Unovan Stunfisk, and we are not able to do so as the opponent expends their final shield. But this Mud Bomb will be knocking out our Toxicroak, and this is looking like a GG as the opponent still has a full health Skarmory in the back, and they are able to call game here with a discharge. Well played by the opponent. Thank you for the match. So who would have known that a team with a Fighting Frog and a Steel Bird would be countered by a Flapjack on the lead? But it is what it is. Sometimes I guess the pancakes hit back, right? Hopping into the next game though, we have our Toxicroak on the lead against Araquanid. Araquanid throwing this Bubble Beam, debuffing our attack, but Araquanid will not be appreciating these Sludge Bombs, and knowing that, we're staying in here with Toxicroak. I also had a reflectionary moment where I thought about, I swap out of my lead unprovoked way too often. So I'm staying in here, seeing how this matchup plays out, and we do get the Araquanid down extremely low. They are able to survive on the blessings of their ancestors, but not before we are able to counter them down. Opponent brings in their Altaria, and we safe swap into our Umbreon. Altaria building up a significant amount of energy here to the Dazzling Gleam. Will this be the Gleam? Either way, we will not be respecting it with a shield. Umbreon takes that Dazzling Gleam, dealing super effective damage on the chin. Doesn't have to worry too much about it as we will be able to survive quite easily. The opponent swaps into their Sableye, and this is looking good for us as we're able to throw off this foul play, and will be reaching a second foul play as Umbreon is not only extremely tanky, but heavily resisting these Shadow Claws from the opponent's Sableye. Sableye reaching a charge move here on CMP Tai. This will be knocking out our Umbreon. It will not be knocking out our Umbreon as we do once again survive on the hopes and dreams, the blessings of our ancestors as we swap into our Skarmory. Skarmory met by the opponent's Altaria, and this is a great matchup for Skarmory as even though these Dragon Breaths are resisted, they are oppressive, but we have two shields and are not too concerned with any of the charge moves that the opponent will be throwing into us as we are able to claim the opponent's final shield. And at this point, I'm not too concerned about the two shield flex. I will be expending both shields if necessary to allow our Steel Bird to get the farm down as we do expend our final shield here. But this will be Skarmory calling game. Well played by the opponent. Thank you for the match. And that's our final match for this video. Another 3-2. I feel like I'm battling a little bit better than the results show. It's just minor misplays here and there, which I am telling myself it'll come with familiarity and with getting more comfortable with battling in general. So overall, I had a fantastic time running this throwback line today. It was so much fun getting to revisit Toxicroak in particular, as it does have great play against a lot of Pokemon in the meta, especially when it has an energy advantage late game. So overall, thank you so much for tuning in today. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please leave me a comment if you have any recommendations. That's going to be all from me. Thanks for stopping by. Remember to enjoy the small things. Peace.